My dad always said family means helping each other, but somehow, that help always flowed one way. When he gave my brother $350,000 to buy his dream home, I stayed quiet. But when he turned to me and said, "You can handle his mortgage for a few months, right?" Something snapped. That day, I realized I was never the son he wanted, only the one he used. And this time, instead of swallowing my anger, I decided to let them choke on their own entitlement. My name's Ryan, and if you asked anyone in my family who the favorite child is, you wouldn't even have to wait for an answer. It's Ethan, my younger brother by 3 years, born with perfect timing and perfect charm. Growing up, Dad saw Ethan as the second coming of himself. They watched the same sports, had the same laugh, and shared a talent for making others clean up their messes. When I was 12, I spent weekends mowing lawns to buy a second-hand bike. Ethan got a new one for his birthday. When I worked 2 jobs through college, Ethan dropped out after 1 semester. Dad said he was finding himself. I tried to ignore it for years, convincing myself it wasn't favoritism, just bad luck. Then one Friday evening, I got a text from Mom. "Mom, family dinner tonight at 7. Dad has exciting news." I drove over, already expecting something ridiculous. The house looked the same as always, clean, overdecorated, and filled with the smell of steak and false cheer. Dad was in high spirits. "Ryan, you're going to be proud of your brother," he said, clapping Ethan on the back. He finally found a place. A beautiful home near Lakewood Heights. Ethan grinned like a man who'd won the lottery. Then Dad added, "And I helped him with the down payment, $350,000. My fork froze mid-air. "Wait, you gave him that much?" Dad nodded. "Well, he's starting fresh. Everyone needs a little boost." I wanted to laugh. When I bought my first tiny condo, Dad wouldn't even co-sign. "Teaches responsibility," he'd said then. Mom caught my eye, offering a warning look that said, "Don't ruin dinner." I stayed silent, but something in me cracked. After dinner, while helping clear the table, Mom whispered, "Don't be upset, sweetheart. Your brother's had a rougher time than you." I stared at her. "Mom, rougher? He hasn't worked in years." She sighed. "He's just not as strong as you, Ryan." Right, my punishment for being responsible was subsidizing the family mascot. That night, I drove home in silence, my phone buzzing every few minutes with photos Ethan posted online, #dreamhome, #hardworkpaysoff. I nearly threw my phone out the window. A week later, Dad called me out of the blue. "Son," he began, using that patronizing tone that always came before bad news. "Ethan's settling in, but things are tight for him right now. You're doing well, maybe you could help him out with his first few mortgage payments?" I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. "Dad, I've got my own mortgage, my own bills." "Ryan," he interrupted sharply. "It's not forever. You know how much I've done for you." I bit my tongue. "Actually, I don't." He went silent for a moment, then sighed dramatically. "Don't be selfish. Family helps family." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. An hour later, Ethan texted me. "Hey bro, Dad said you'd help with my mortgage. Appreciate it, man." No question mark. No hesitation. Just entitlement. I didn't reply. Mom called that night too, using her soft, guilt-drenched voice. "Honey, your brother's been through a lot. You're in such a stable place, you could afford to help him, right?" "Mom, he got $350,000. "Yes, but houses are expensive. So are principals." The silence on the line told me I'd crossed into dangerous territory. The next few weeks were uncomfortable. Family group chats went quiet whenever I joined. I became the selfish one. Then one afternoon, I received something that changed everything, a thick envelope from the bank, mistakenly mailed to my address. It was a mortgage statement under Ethan's name. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened it and froze. He'd already missed a payment. Then I saw something worse, a home equity loan for an additional $80,000 labeled renovation. Renovation? He'd been in that house for less than a month. It hit me, Ethan wasn't struggling, he was spending recklessly, knowing Dad would cover the fallout, or maybe expecting me to. That night, Dad called again. "Ethan's feeling pressure. Maybe just cover a few months until he stabilizes. I finally snapped. Dad, he's 30. Not 15. He got $350,000 from you, and now he wants me to pay his bills? Dad exhaled sharply. You always were jealous. This is why we can't have family unity. Jealous. That word echoed in my chest like an insult carved into stone. I hung up mid-sentence. That night, something inside me shifted from anger to resolve. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. If they wanted to see how it felt when I stopped carrying the family burden, they were about to find out, publicly. Over the next few months, I went silent. No arguments, no explanations. Ethan's social media feed told the story for me, and it was pure chaos. He posted pictures of pool parties, new furniture, and champagne dinners. New chapter, one caption said. But behind the filters, the cracks were showing. I knew the bank letters were piling up. I knew because Dad accidentally forwarded one to me while trying to send Ethan a reminder. By the third month, Ethan's tone shifted. Hey bro, can we talk? Things are a bit rough. Just one payment, and I swear I'll get back on track. I ignored him. Then came Dad's voicemail, a masterpiece of manipulation. Ryan, I don't know what's gotten into you. Your brother's drowning, and you're sitting there doing nothing. What happened to compassion? I saved that voicemail. I had a feeling it would come in handy. A few days later, Mom called in tears. Ethan's mortgage is overdue. The bank's threatening action. Please, Ryan, don't let your father's heart break. I asked quietly, whose name is on the loan? She hesitated. Ethan's. Then it's Ethan's problem. Click. For the first time in my life, I felt free. No guilt. No apology. Just clarity. But the real show was about to begin. Ethan's financial house of cards finally collapsed. The bank issued a foreclosure warning. Dad's pride was too big to let the neighbors find out, so he scrambled to cover it, dipping into his own retirement fund. I waited. Patiently. Because revenge works best when it looks like coincidence. When Dad started whispering about family disappointment and private shame, I smiled quietly. They were about to learn what shame really felt like. It's funny how money can expose the cracks you never noticed in your own family. When my dad handed my brother a $350,000 check to buy his dream home, I didn't complain. I just smiled and congratulated him, thinking maybe one day my hard work would earn me the same respect. But that illusion shattered when Dad told me, almost casually, that I'd be covering my brother's monthly mortgage payments for the family's sake. That was the moment I realized I wasn't a son in his eyes. I was just the convenient backup plan for their golden boy. My brother, Matt, was always the achiever. Or at least, that's how Dad saw him. Growing up, he could fail an exam and still be praised for trying his best. Meanwhile, if I brought home a 95%, Dad would ask, why not 100? Mom stayed quiet, like she'd learned long ago that fairness wasn't worth fighting for. When Matt got into college, Dad bought him a new car. I worked nights at a diner to afford a second-hand one. Matt got a full dorm setup. I stayed at home to save money. Still, I never complained. I thought being silent was maturity. After graduation, I built my own small construction business, starting with 2 guys and an old van. I poured everything into it, sweat, time, savings. Within 6 years, I had 20 employees, steady contracts, and finally, a life I'd earned. Meanwhile, Matt had switched jobs 5 times. Marketing, sales, consulting, every title meant another 6 months of Dad's emergency funding. Then one evening at dinner, Dad announced, "We're helping Matt buy a house. It's time he settled down." I thought helping meant maybe co-signing. But when the checkbook came out and Dad wrote $350,000 across the page like it was pocket change, my jaw clenched. I remember Mom's nervous smile. Matt grinned, saying, "Thanks, Dad. You're saving my life." I looked down at my plate, forcing myself to stay quiet. But when Dad turned to me and said, "And you'll help by covering his monthly mortgage, just until he's stable," I laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. Dad said, "You've got a business, son. You're doing great. Your brother just needs a boost." We're family, we share our blessings. That night, I sat in my truck, staring at my calloused hands, wondering why I was the only one expected to share. At first, I refused. Politely. Calmly. Dad, I can't pay Matt's mortgage. That's not my responsibility. He sighed, disappointed. You're being selfish. We raised you better. That hit harder than I expected. Selfish, the word he'd never used on Matt, even when he drained their savings. Then came the guilt trips. Mom called saying Dad's blood pressure had spiked from stress. Matt texted, "It's just temporary, bro. You make good money." Finally, Dad showed up at my office. He walked past my receptionist like he owned the place. "Son," he said, "you can afford it. It's only fair you help." Fair. A word that meant something completely different in our house. I stared at him, trying to process how my success had somehow made me responsible for everyone else's poor decisions. "Dad, if you can write a $350,000 check for him, you can cover his mortgage." He shook his head. "It's not about money. It's about family unity. Matt can't afford the payments yet, but once his job stabilizes, he'll pay you back." I asked, "Like he paid you back for his car? For the tuition? For the failed startups?" He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. By the time he left, I knew I'd lost something deeper than just fairness. I'd lost my father's respect. A week later, Mom visited me quietly. She said Dad was furious and that helping Matt was the only way to keep the peace. So I agreed, not out of love, but exhaustion. For 3 months, I paid that mortgage, $2,400 every month. Matt never thanked me once. He posted selfies in his new backyard with captions like "Hard work pays off." Hard work. Funny word coming from someone who'd never paid a bill on time in his life. But when I found out he'd bought a new 75-inch TV and a gaming setup, using my money, something inside me snapped. I stopped the payments. 2 weeks later, Dad stormed into my house, red-faced. "You stopped paying. Do you want your brother homeless?" "Maybe he should think about that before buying luxury furniture," I shot back. He glared. "Don't talk to me like that," I said, "then stop treating me like your wallet." He turned and left, muttering, "You'll regret this." But what he didn't know was, I was already working on a plan. I'd learned enough from running my business to know how debt and property really worked. So when Dad used my name to co-sign Matt's loan without my permission, yes, he forged my signature, I was ready. I discovered it when a letter from the bank arrived, addressed to me. Notice of co-borrower obligation. My stomach dropped. I called the bank immediately. They confirmed my signature on the document. I drove there in person, demanded to see the papers, and when they pulled them out, I nearly laughed. It was my name, all right, but the signature? A bad imitation. The manager said, "We assumed it was authorized since your father presented your ID copies." I kept my voice steady. "Then you just confirmed a case of forgery." They froze. I walked out that day not just angry, but calculating. For a week, I said nothing to my family. I wanted to see how far they'd go pretending everything was fine. Then Dad called. "Matt's housewarming is this weekend. Bring a gift." "Oh, don't worry," I said. "I'll bring something unforgettable." And I did. At the party, surrounded by family and friends, I stood up, holding a folder. Since we're all celebrating, I thought I'd show everyone the real foundation this house was built on: fraud. The room went dead silent. I laid the papers on the table, side by side, the forged loan, the proof of my handwriting, and the letter from the bank confirming they were investigating. Mom gasped. Matt's smile vanished. Dad's face turned pale. "You forged my signature to get your golden boy a house," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "You wanted me to pay for it too. You call that family?" People started whispering. My uncle muttered, "That's illegal." Dad barked, "You're humiliating us." "No, Dad," I said, "you did that yourself." I turned to the banker's wife, who was in the crowd, and added, "You might want to tell your husband the co-borrower just filed a fraud complaint." Then I walked out. By the next morning, the bank had frozen the account and launched a formal inquiry. Matt's mortgage was under review, and Dad's reputation, the honest businessman, began to crumble in our small town. Within 48 hours, chaos hit like a storm. The bank froze Dad's joint accounts pending investigation. Matt called me in panic. "Bro, you didn't have to do that. You're ruining Dad's reputation." I said, "He did that when he committed fraud. He tried another tactic. They're saying I might lose the house. I'll be homeless." I almost laughed. "You've got a $75,000 truck and a TV bigger than your ego. Sell something." Dad didn't call. Not once. But Mom showed up crying on my porch. She begged me to withdraw the complaint. "He could be arrested, honey. Please, he's still your father." I swallowed hard. "Then he should have acted like one." She whispered, "You don't know how humiliated he is." I answered, "Maybe now he knows how I felt when he made me his financial slave." That night, I sat in my office replaying everything, every insult disguised as advice, every sacrifice brushed aside. I felt a mix of guilt and freedom. A week later, the local paper ran a small piece. "Local businessman under investigation for forgery in property deal." Everyone knew who it was. Clients started calling my company to confirm if I was involved. I told them the truth, that I was the victim, not the culprit. The honesty worked. In fact, a few said they respected me more for standing up to family fraud. Meanwhile, Dad's company began losing contracts. His partners distanced themselves quietly. He finally called. His tone was cold, formal. "You've made your point. Now fix it." I replied, "I didn't make your choices, Dad. You did." He muttered, "You'll regret turning your back on family." I said, "Family turned its back on me long before I did anything." And then I hung up. For the first time, I felt clean. Empty, but clean. The investigation took months. Matt's mortgage was officially voided, the loan rescinded. He had two options: repay the full $350,000 or forfeit the property. He called me again, angry now. "You destroyed my life. You could have just helped." I said, "You mean kept paying for you? Like always?" He shouted, "You're jealous because Dad loves me more." That line hit something deep. I almost responded, but stopped. He just said the quiet part out loud. When the house was repossessed, Mom called again, crying. They were forced to sell Dad's car and use part of their retirement savings to settle the investigation fines. I didn't gloat. I didn't post online or brag to anyone. But I did something that symbolically ended it all. I built a house of my own. Every beam, every nail, every tile was placed by my crew and me. I named the property Stonefair. It was built on land I bought years ago with pure sweat equity, no loans, no handouts. When the house was finished, I invited Mom. Just her. She walked through quietly, touching the walls. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Then, after a long pause, she said, "Your father doesn't sleep at night. He says he's lost both sons." I replied softly, "He never had two. He had one he funded and one he used." She nodded through tears. Before she left, she said, "I'm proud of you. I just wish it hadn't come to this." I smiled sadly. "So do I, Mom. But maybe this was the only way he'd finally see me." After she left, I stood on my porch watching the sunset over the frame of my new life, one I built without their strings. Then I went inside and opened my journal, writing 6 words that summed up everything. They taught me loyalty, I learned justice. Months passed. One afternoon, I got a call from a familiar number, a local developer who'd once worked with Dad. "We heard you're running your own contracting firm. We're looking for someone reliable, honest." The irony wasn't lost on me. That deal alone was worth more than what Dad's company had lost in half a year. My business grew, and soon I was employing some of the same contractors who'd left him. Word spread that my company, Trueform Builders, had integrity, something my father's lacked. I never went after him directly. I didn't need to. Reputation was its own slow revenge. Then one day, Dad showed up at my office. He looked older, defeated. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded cautiously. He sat down and said, "I lost everything. The house, the company, even Matt moved away. He doesn't talk to me. I waited. He took a deep breath. I know I wronged you. I was proud but blind. I thought helping Matt would bring him up, but all I did was pull you down. Hearing that didn't fix everything, but it softened something inside me. I said, you didn't just pull me down, Dad. You made me feel like I didn't matter. He looked at the floor. You always mattered. I just showed it wrong. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then he said quietly, I'm sorry. It wasn't dramatic. No tears, no hugs. But it was real. Before he left, he looked around my office and said, you built this on your own. I said, that's the difference, Dad, I built. You bought. He gave a small, broken smile and walked out. I never saw him the same way again, not as a father, but as a man learning his own lesson. In the end, I didn't need to destroy my father or my brother. Life did that for me, with truth and time. I learned that sometimes revenge isn't loud or explosive. Sometimes it's the quiet peace of standing in what you've built while those who wronged you face what they've lost. My father wanted me to pay for my brother's dream. Instead, I made them pay for their entitlement. And when I finally locked the doors of my own home, I realized justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers, you won.